welcome our speaker today, the Reverend Judith Elia, who's an ordained Unity minister who's served diverse congregations for over 30 years. She's also a Florida licensed marriage and family therapist. From a young age, her fascinating with the soul of psychology led her to train extensively with psychosocial historian and psychoanalyst Eric K. Erickson in family systems pioneering village, Virginia Satir. She has traveled widely to study with spiritual teachers from Cambodia, China, India, Tibet, and Turkey. She's organized conferences and events internationally for world peace, holistic medicine, and the spiritual unity of the world's religions. She's recently retired, was a senior minister of Unity of Port Richey, and serves the Tent of Nations and the Palestine Institute for Biodiversity and Sustainability in Bethlehem, occupied Palestine from mid-May until July 22nd. Please welcome Reverend Judith Elia.
Thank you. You are luminous beings. There's a lot more to you than what's between your hat and your boots. And that is our topic for today, to rise up angels. I think the quote that Beth used was so perfect. The one about devils and angels. Because I think that, you know, at the temptation of Jesus, we symbolically had this moment of his awakening, his choice, you know, that we all daily take, I think. You know, the choice to either, you know, throw yourself down because you know that God will save you, you know, or, you know, I will give you all the riches of the earth if you just come with me, which seems to be something that's done a lot today, right? The denial of any morality whatsoever and just business as usual. Whatever I can get for the greed or the pleasure or, you know, just the wealth, you know, or the power that I individually can have in this one limited incarnation. You know, there are all of these temptations to vainglory, you know, I will make of you, you know, the greatest, and everyone will worship you. You know, that tendency for us to want, stardom, everyone knows my name, I am the queen or the king. You know, that aspect of our personality that we all have. Our egos all manifest that way. And so what we see in the world from a spiritual point of view is a vibration, you know, is a mirrored reflection of who we are. And it's really getting hard to watch, isn't it? It's really getting hard to watch. And, you know, I've had conversations with several people today about how difficult it is to even have a conversation with some of our friends, you know, some of our people that we love, some of our family members around these issues of war and peace. Because if you were raised Jewish and you were a part of, you know, the day camps and, you know, the glory of being with your Jewish friends for the first time, feeling like you had a community, you know, you had people who you could identify with, and then you went to Israel and you partied hardy, you know, with all your friends, and you engaged in all these amazing events, and you went to all these places, you know, and it was free, you know, and you came back with this sense of love for Israel. It is very painful to even hear what's going on in Palestine. And people don't want to hear it. I mean, my relatives have taken themselves off my email list because they think I've been taken over by Hamas, you know, and they know better. I mean, I have really smart relatives, and one of my relatives even said to me, please don't send me any more of that stuff. It's too painful. you know. And I talked to a friend of mine. Well, actually, we texted. You know, I call that talking now. But, you know, he texted me. He's actually in the hospital, and he's himself a medical doctor and a philanthropist, one of a really great and generous people who have opened synagogues and fostered all kinds of good in the Jewish community. And, you know, he said to me today, this is horrendous. This has to stop, you know. I think more than anything, I treasure the artist in us. I'm here to talk to you today about integration, you know, balancing the artist, the warrior, and the meditator energies in us so that we can lead healthier, happier, more meaningful lives. And I love the artist. You know, the artist is the one who can create something. That's the part of us that is the storyteller. It's the moment when Jesus draws something in the sand to chill everybody out and then asks this question that probably no one had ever thought of before. Who among you that is without sin can throw the first stone? You know, that must have stopped people in their tracks who were just used to seeing the adulteress, just the woman, not the man, just the woman, as the one who gets stoned. And I think one of the things I love about the stories of Jesus, whether they're accurate or not, you know, is that they represent this radical inclusivity, which he called in Aramaic, Gemira. You know, he said, be like your Father in heaven. Not perfect. I think that was a mistranslation, because in Aramaic, the word's Gemira. Be like your Father in heaven. Or not even Father, because there's no gender in Aramaic, so he wouldn't have said Father. Be like the source of life, Gemira, that shines equally on all people, and the rain rains on everyone. Be Gemira. And you know, when you look at the story of this person that we call Jesus, he ministered to everyone. He was criticized for it. He dined with everyone. He was criticized for it. He was called a glutton and a sinner because he left no one out of his circle of love. He defied all rules of decorum. You know, in a society thousands of years ago that believed that the way that you looked and who you were with and where you sat in the temple was your worth. It was your worth, you know? And there were hard and fast rules, human rules, written into the Bible about what you could do and what you couldn't do. And so through his creativity and his ability to utilize this energy of creativity and storytelling, he would put the hated Samaritan in the place of the person that was good in a story, which those words good and Samaritan would never have gone together in his time period. So it would shock people because he was a warrior for justice. And he had this warrior energy. He didn't have it all the time. He had the most amazing compassion, right? Because he was constantly telling people, don't worry, don't be afraid. Your faith has made you well. Be of good cheer. You know, he had so many good things to say. And yet, he also talked truth to power. He had this warrior energy. You blind guides and thick-necked vipers, clean the inside of your cup. You know, this person needs to be healed, and so it's Sunday. Do you take your animal out of a pit on a Sunday? You know, he really had that warrior energy, and he called it forth. for some of us lately, peacekeeping has meant passivity, not doing anything. I call them passivists. You know, and I call myself on that because for a long time, I believed I had to get myself enlightened first. You know, I really saw how, you know, around me, you know, the angry peace activists didn't make sense. You know, that I had to embody peace in order to be of service in the world. And I have come to realize in this last year, that is not true. That really what I believe, because I've been completely bored by most of my friends who are not participating in this genocide for even a modicum of understanding, who won't do anything to take a stand because, as Trump once said, there's good people on both sides, right? People are really taking that point of view that are deeply spiritual people. And I think that is wrong. And I think it's wrong because I think that all the teachers I've ever known and all of the leaders of the spiritual traditions that I've ever read about, yes, they emphasized inner work and spiritual development and becoming the action that you want to see in the world, but they also taught faith without works is dead. Gandhi sat in silence for a long time before he did the Salt March, which eventually liberated India. And his friends didn't agree with him when he got his direction from meditation to take people into the street and take back the salt, which was against the law because of British colonial rule. People thought he was insane. Most of the people he highly regarded in his circle of friends did not want to go. He did it anyway because he was a warrior, he was a meditator, and he knew that if his still small voice had guided him to do something, then he had to do it, regardless of opinion, regardless of whether it was apparently successful or not. And he was an artist. He was an amazing artist. He taught people to spin the loom. You know, he believed that by creating things, you know, khadi cloth and ceramic things and things that were indigenous to the people of India, by claiming their artistic, creative, fruitful selves, they would be free. By growing their own food, by taking care of each other, by including the untouchables in their community. So he had those three energies well balanced. But he could totally be a warrior. But he had to embody it. You probably all know the story about, you know, the mother bringing her child to Gandhi and saying, could you please tell him to stop eating so much sugar? And Gandhi said, you know, bring him back in a month. So she brought him back in a month, and Gandhi said, stop eating so much sugar. And the mother was like, what was that about? He said, well, I had to do it first. You know, and it's a joke, because how can we do it, right? We can only do it progressively. You know, I don't believe enlightenment comes overnight. And I am completely bored by most of the spiritual communities I used to be excited about. And the reason for me is because they're not talking about what's really happening in the world. They're not addressing the issue. They're not even holding a space where honesty can be expressed. They're not even willing to listen to an opinion that's different than theirs. And that's not spiritual at all. That's not enlightened at all. Jesus was a Semite. He was a Palestinian Jew, but the word Semite does not belong to Jews. The word Semite means a member of any number of peoples of ancient southwestern Asia, including Akkadians, Assyrians, Phoenicians, Egyptians, Sumerians, Hebrews, Samaritans, Canaanites, Palestinians, Arabians, and their descendants who speak African Asiatic languages, Aramaic, Arabic, Coptic, Hebrew, Sanskrit, Yiddish, and many diverse indigenous African language. Jews are not the only Semites. Part of what we do to pseudo-speciate ourselves is we take language and we twist it to make someone else the enemy. You know, peacekeepers become people with guns. You know, we have these societies, these nonprofits, you know, for democracy that are really about censorship. And we are learning that because we have social media. We are learning that because we have brave journalists. And we're learning that when you speak truth to power, they kill you. That's something that Mataji taught me, you know, because I have a big mouth, you know, because I'm a passionate Italian, you know, over the kitchen where I live, because there was a mouthy Italian woman like me that used to live there before me. There's a thing that says, "I'm not yelling, I'm Italian." Yeah, or Greek, right? So, you know, so Mataji told me, you know, if you speak truth, they'll kill you. And she knew firsthand, right? Because they were all She fought for women's rights. She fought for human rights. She had an orphanage where she took in untouchable kids. She adopted 6 kids and college educated them all after she had 5 kids of her own. She was really an incredible woman in India. And because of that, they gave her this title, Maha Mandaleshwar, which means the one who has crossed over the ocean of life, right? It means she's enlightened. So she was the first woman in the history of India to get that title, and she passed it around. And they hated her for that. The same people that were the fundamentalists who killed Gandhi were constantly trying to kill her. I didn't really know that when she was alive, because she never really talked about it. But I always wondered, why are there armed guards at the ashram in Hardwar? You know, I always wondered why, you know, she was leaving and taking trips with me and taking us to roads that were really obscure because she didn't want her students that were in Hardwar to be in danger. So she thought by going off unexpectedly, and I was on my way to Dharamsala, she'd go with me and then we'd take a longer trip to Dharamsala, and they wouldn't find her. But it wasn't until years later that I realized what that was. And there's a lesson in that for me and for all of us, that there is oftentimes a far greater thing going on than we can currently see. And when this was happening to me with Mataji, I wanted to boot her out of the car in the next train station because I was anxious to get to Dharamsala. You know, I just wanted to like toss the guru, you know, out in the train station, you know, because of my own self-centeredness, you know, because of my own desire to look at this map and go, no, we're not going in the right direction, right? Or like, you know, and I look back at that, like maybe you look back on some times in your life, like one of the greatest trips I ever took. You know, I met my first camel. You know, I saw places in India I never would have been, you know, and at the time, I didn't like it, you know? And when I look back on my life, some of the worst times of my life were the best, you know, were the most growthful, were the most beautiful. You know, people say things like, oh, thank you for going to Palestine, you're so brave. I am not. It is the most fulfilling thing I've done in my life so far because I felt useful, you know, and I took care of animals, and I love animals. You know, I will forever be a fox mother and a hyena mother now, you know, like caring about those animals because I love them and I never would have met them. And I love the people there. And it's like we were talking about before the service, once you see, you can't not see, you know? And so don't be afraid to jump in. Yes, it will hurt. And as Gibran said, the depths of your pain will equal the heights of your joy. We don't need to shield ourselves from pain. And we can't allow anyone to occupy our brain. I mean, I don't even think we know how brainwashed we are, you know, and how much cognitive dissonance our friends and our families are under, you know, because we identify with our political party, or we identify with our ethnicity, or we identify with our personality. But we are more than that. You know, and the soul grows through disidentification with the personality, through disidentification with the ethnicity, through not taking sides, but still being open to your own opinion and everybody else's, and acting the best on what you know. And you could be completely mistaken. And if you are walking in the direction of good, based on what you know to be true, you will never be set back. But if you just sit there and do nothing in the middle of a genocide, how can you feel alive? The Buddha said to Kalama, his best friend, and to all his students, and in this really cool scripture called the Jesus Sutras, that is from China, the 7th century, that's attributed to Jesus. He basically says that there is a law of Dharma called know unexamined truth. Don't let anyone tell you what to think, and don't believe everything you think, because you have no idea where your thoughts have come from. It can take years to cut through your own brainwashing. So to Kalama, sorry, keep saying that wrong, to Kalama, his best friend, he said, don't accept anything simply because it has been said by your teacher, or merely because it's been written in your sacred book, or because it's been handed down to you from your ancestors. Accept and live only that which you see as truth, face to face. You are the salt of the earth, Jesus said. But what is it if you no longer have your flavor, your saltiness? It's worthless. And I think by that, he was saying, don't lose your zest for life. Don't lose your passion for living. Saltiness is good. I saw wonderful sign. I told my friend, you have to put that into a t-shirt and I'll buy it. And because there's this huge heavy stone thing, so I couldn't take it in my suitcase. It said, I solemnly swear I'm up to no good, but it's the right kind of trouble. So I have an acronym for the SALT, right? For saltiness, for the SALT march. Because I think we're on a salt march of kinds, right? Maybe India was liberated from British rule, but India has become a colonizer. You know, the Modi party is like the same as the current regime in Israel. They're friends. They think alike. You know, I don't know if you know what Modi did, but, you know, he vowed to destroy the temple, I mean, the sanctuary, the beautiful place where Muslims had been for 500 years practicing their religion, and return it to Hanuman. I think Hanuman probably didn't like that. You know, Hanuman was this incredible sage of love and friendship. The whole Ramayana is about Hanuman leaping across mountains to save Sita and just being this humble, loving servant of God. And at the end of the story, Ram, who represents God, looks at Hanuman and says, Hanuman, why are you acting so weird? I'm giving you all these treasures and you're ripping them apart and spitting them out. And Hanuman says, I have no need for any of these jewels. They mean nothing. They don't even have your name on them. And Ram says, Hanuman, vest of monkeys. You know, there are places where you don't have my name, even on your body. And Hanuman opens up his chest. And Ram is written everywhere in his heart. And Ram puts his Hanuman's self back together, heals his wound, and he says, Hanuman, how can I ever thank you for saving the world? And Hanuman simply says, look, this is the last line of the Ramayana, that's what friends are for. That's what friends are for. So here's the SALT acronym. S, serve. Find a way to do something where you profit not at all, that you're only doing it to help out something, someone, somewhere. They call it seva in Sanskrit, selfless service. A, affirm. Speak words that uplift, that vibrationally heal. You know, affirm. Don't always just look at the negative. Find something. There's a alternative news that I love called Electronic Intifada. Remember that, electronic intifada. Intifada means uprising. So for years, these beautiful four people have been bringing the news of the uprising of humanity, especially focused on Palestine, to the world. And I love them so much because they're so authentic. They cry. They get choked up. How can you not? If you're reporting on what's happening each week in Gaza and the West Bank and the Golan Heights and Sudan and everywhere, I mean, it's going to make you cry, right? And they're so loving with each other that in a recent electronic intifada, they said, I'm sorry, Ali. I know that's your town, you know, because he's from the town that's getting bombed, you know. His family is there, you know. So it's very real, honest journalism. And I really love that. But they have chosen not to focus only on the facts of the negative, but at the end of every time they give this weekly report, they find good things to show you, like children playing in a rainstorm in Gaza, you know, or kids going into the water, or, clowns doing things with the kids. They have this one journalist, I think he's maybe only 20 years old, and he always has something positive to say, and he's living in Gaza. I'll never forget him showing us a yellow rose blooming. Like everything else in his town was bombed. He showed us that yellow rose. And he said, I want you to have hope because this flower lives. The amazing resilience of humanity. So S, serve, A, affirm, L, love. Work it. Unconditional love. Do not hate. Bless your enemies. Bless those that curse you. Love your enemies. It's hard, but it's what we're called for. And then T, truth. Speak truth. Live truth. Embody truth. It's not a perfect science, because what we learn one day, we might say, I don't think that anymore. In fact, Eric Erickson, my teacher, a great child psychoanalyst, also an artist. His wife was an incredible fabric artist. And I met him when he was older, in his 80s, I think, and I went to a seminar, a weekend event, and a lot of his Ericksonian students were pointing out things that he had said in the 50s. And he'd get this look on his face, and he'd open the book and he'd read it, and he'd look at them and he'd say, cross that out, I don't think that anymore. Be salty, full of flavor and juiciness. Let's join the salt march, even though it's crazy, until all people are free. Thank you.